talk us through the books that you want to recommend and why you want to recommend those books.
So the first one is negotiations. Everything we do as human beings, everything, whether it's within the family, in our small communities, with friends or whatever, sort of without being aware of it, we always kind of negotiating. What are we going to do? When we do things together, we are trying to create a space where there is acceptability and benefits to all the members of that community. This is what negotiation is about.
Wow.
Yeah? And I would urge, especially young people, to really, really understand what is in here if they can lay their hands on this.
And it's a book by...
It's a business. It's
one of Harvard
Business Essentials.
Right.
It's a very easy read. You can see it's a very small book. The essential, though, touch back on some of your questions to me. Why not have a dialogue? A dialogue has got preconditions of all of the parties when you go into a negotiation, having clarity. What I want, why I want to negotiate, why I want to go into a dialogue, what I want out of it, what are my walk away points. In other words, what is my reserve price beyond which I'll say, you know what, it's not worth it, I'm walking away. But critically, it requires that I accord all the other parties exactly the same. In my mind, before I come to negotiate with you, I must give legitimacy to Trevor's own interests.
Yeah. Fully.
If I don't do that, I won't achieve anything. Even if I would wink you into something like that because I think I'm smart, it will unwind down the line. Yeah? These are the essentials of negotiations, of dialogue.
So that's the first one?
That's the first book. This one, Obliquity. Again, very simple thing is that when, again, we look at life and our lives, it's fascinating that most things that we achieve are achieved through a path which is indirect.
I agree with you.
Yeah?
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Indirect.
Yeah.
But I think the speed with which modern life is
So
happening,
this is Obliquity by John Kay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The speed with which things are happening around us these days tends to force us inadvertently into a very direct mechanism. So I walk into this room, I've got a meeting with Trevor. I don't spend time asking Trevor about his health, about his family, and all of these so-called time-wasting things which used to happen. Actually, they ease the ground. When we get to the substance, a lot will have happened already in terms of establishing a rapport. It appears to be long-winded, indirect, but actually it shortens the journey further down the line. But in the modern day, I walk in, shake hands, Trevor, did you read the papers?
Let's do the deal.
Let's do the deal. But actually, when we look at real life, it's like that, Obliquity.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah.
Then the next one?
Then this book, I've picked up 3, but I want to leave you with another 2, which I didn't bring. Colin Powell wrote this book. It worked for me. And my biggest takeaway from this book was his relationship with what we would call subordinates, colleagues, but where there is a rank, i.e. there is somebody senior and so on. I was fascinated by the element in this book about his capacity to have incredible clarity about creating an environment where his subordinates understood they could challenge him as if he was just a counterpart. In the process of arriving at a decision, he gave them license, permission to be very challenging. Challenge does not mean you are disrespectful. But he then said, once we have decided, then I want even those who were against that decision
to line up.
No, they're not just line up.
No.
To own it and act as if it was their decision.
Powerful.
Yeah? It's but it's such a powerful thing if you're going to create ownership of whatever, because the implementation of anything is not a hierarchical issue. Implementation is by the troops. And if they've been involved with that license of, I'll robustly say no and tell you why I say no, argue with you and feel I've got permission to do so, it's easier for me to then come into line and execute.
Interesting. Why I'm responding is because he's a military man, and you did talk earlier about the military.
Yeah.
But an Oxford professor of mine said something which has stayed with me for a while. He said, the difference between politics and business is that in politics, you get into a meeting, you agree on something to go and implement. When you walk out of the room, you all behave in a manner that makes it impossible to implement what you agreed on. In business, you get into a boardroom, you have a conversation, a discussion, you all go out to implement on what you discussed. And it says to me that politics is...
Okay, Trevor, yes and no. Yes and no, because you're right if you define politics as all of these different parties put together. When I look at a ruling party as politics, as a political party, there is nothing about the architecture of a ruling party that is different from a company. Why don't they all own the agenda all at the same time? There is absolutely no excuse, none. I think it's the clarity, especially of the person running the show. Go to Kagame and try and do that. Just you try it.
You have two other books? You have two other books?
One of the books which I read a long time ago, I've lost it, and I think it's actually out of print, was by Mahathir, the Prime Minister of Singapore, of Malaysia at the time. And it was called The Malay Dilemma.
I think I've got that book actually.
You have?
Yeah, your book.
I've lost
your
mine.
book. I think
it's my book.
I suspect I've got it, but
I want that book. But that is an amazing book because it also speaks to some of our challenges. How do you take over a society that has got these historical divides? Like, very quickly, Malaysia had, the people who had assets in Malaysia were of Chinese origin. The majority, the Bumiputra, had very little at stake. And what the leadership of Malaysia had to grapple with was how do you make a minority which has got everything understand that it is in their interests to bring up this majority who've got nothing to lose, create more people with something to lose as a protection mechanism.
Powerful. Yes,
Zimbabwe failed to manage that. Zimbabwe totally failed to manage. How do you create clarity about the past is the past? I'm clear about the future I want to create, and how do I mobilize my community, all the aspects of my community, to start to begin to see common good in the construct of creating that future.
And the last one?
The last one is pick up a book about Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore. Right. So it's Malaysia and Singapore, okay? And for me, Singapore talks to something I go on and on about, which people don't seem to pay too much attention, meritocracy. Lee Kuan Yew's approach to building Singapore was based, amongst other things, on a clarity about meritocracy. Merit and competence develops very quickly a self-belief by the people. Self-belief is a necessary ingredient for people to feel they can do anything. They have to believe in themselves. How do they get to believe in themselves? Through observing the people they identify with doing things competently. Then if you can do it, so can I. That's how children behave. If they see another child swimming, their attitude immediately,
I can do it.
I can do this.